Hello, everybody. This is Katie from Fuel to Run. And before I get started, I'm doing the Road to Grandma's Marathon episode 6 today. So this will be my 6th episode. Before we get started, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of an update about just a short blurb about who I am, kind of why I'm sharing my Road to Grandma's episodes, and just kind of dive into a little bit of update on how things are going. But first, I just kind of wanted to do a little bit of an intro in case somebody's jumping in and they don't have any background into who I am and what why I'm here talking. Um, my name is Katie. I'm actually a sports dietitian. So I do um, sports dietetics, sports nutrition, fueling for mostly endurance athletes and runners. I have a board certification in sports dietetics. I also am a coach, so I've been running for about 30 years now, and I coach athletes. So I just do a few different things with nutrition. So it's not just athletes. I also work with other individuals and various different contexts, but I have been running for 30 years. This is going to be believe it's going to be my 11th marathon. So I've been doing marathons for a bit. Done several other races, and I just wanted to share my journey with the Road to Grandma's Marathon. This is been a harder journey for me. I just want to kind of share what's going on. That's my purpose here, and to provide a little bit of like insights and other things that I'm learning along the way, but also insights from previous marathons and from just my knowledge as like a dietitian and as a coach, to maybe like take my journey and help others with their journeys as well, because I think there's a lot of relatable things. So I do in these episodes start by talking a lot about my training and kind of an update. And then I try to kind of include some other information and some tidbits from what I'm learning and also how I'm approaching things. And today I do want to talk a little bit about the recovery piece and sort of how I think about recovery, how I approach recovery, especially now I'm actually in the master's category. I just had a birthday, so I am getting older, like most people, like all of us. And so recovery is definitely more challenging to recover as quickly now that I'm older and in the master's athlete category. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my experience and how I'm trying to recover while also maintaining or trying to maintain higher mileage. Of course, last time I talked, I was sharing with everyone that I'd had a bit of a setback. So I'll kind of start there and maybe we can jump right in. But back about 2.5 weeks ago, I started to get sick, and there's a lot of things that happened. So if you want to kind of maybe recap that illness, you can go back to my last episode about setbacks. But I got really sick, and it actually is still taking me some time to get back into training. Um, so it wasn't until last week, probably, I would say, I started to actually start to run a little bit more and kind of ramp up my mileage again. The week before that, it was until Thursday. So it wasn't until like Thursday, April 30th, that I was actually able to start running again after taking pretty much nearly a whole week off. And I wasn't able to do much more than really easy runs and maybe some strength training. So I had to kind of take it really easy. So it was like a week and a half of pretty much being down. I had basically 2 down weeks, 2 low mileage weeks with that illness. And it's amazing to me how much my fitness was impacted. I don't truly know. I mean, I'll talk about kind of how last week went. I don't truly know how much it has impacted my fitness yet, because I've been doing a little bit of research into illness. Of course, we have our immunity episode, but that was really more about when to a little bit about preventing illness, what to do if you do get sick. It was more about whether or not you should train when you're sick. But we didn't really talk a lot about what happens after you get sick and what happens when you try to get back into training, and the downfall or the side effects of being sick. So I was doing a little bit of research, and it makes sense. Like, when you're still, even after you start to feel better, there's still some systemic, like, inflammation from the immune system trying to fight off the illness. I had a poor appetite that I really struggled with during that whole week that I was really sick. And unfortunately, I lost a little bit of weight in that process. So I'm sure being undernourished kind of had an impact also. And the other thing I was reading about was that the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system can be impacted, and that can last a couple of weeks before you might start to sort of realize your fitness again. And that resting heart rate and heart rate during exercise can be impacted. In fact, many people who try to get back into training after having something like a respiratory illness like the flu or COVID will often notice that sometimes their resting heart rate stays elevated, but they also notice that their heart rate during exercise can be 10 to 20 points higher for the same RPE. So, like an easy recovery run, the heart rate's higher. And that's something I definitely notice, especially kind of getting back into it. But more so last week when I actually started to pay attention to heart rate again. When I was just trying to do some easy runs, I was just going off of RP. I wasn't like looking at my heart rate too much. I only was looking at resting heart rate. And I did notice my resting heart rate was a bit elevated when I was sick, and then it kind of came down, and now it's back closer to normal. But my heart rate when I've been training has been consistently elevated, and it's been about 10 to 20 points higher. Like, it just not maybe 10 points, but not like hugely significant. But it's just been kind of hot on the higher end, and just in general, like, my effort, it just seems like it's been more of a struggle to stay at an effort that was previously a bit easier. And so I'll kind of go through my training last week because it was like the full week I was able to kind of get back. And yeah, it's been hard. I've been a little bit, I think, being through I was on such a this happens, you're feeling really good. You're seeing the fitness week over week kind of improving. You're on a good trajectory, and then something kind of takes you down, especially when it's kind of prolonged. It's hard to build that momentum back up again. It's hard to feel good and, feel like, even if you jump back in and you're feeling good, it's so hard once that momentum has been broken to build that back up again. And so runs, it was just hard for me to even motivate to go running. But, it wasn't like when I have that momentum and I'm sort of doing it day after day, it's just like part of my day. But after taking and having to kind of take it easy for so long, trying to get back was a challenge, to say the least. So it's still still a challenge. It's gonna take me, probably won't be until next week. I don't know. I'll probably start to feel like I'm back in it, feeling good, and it's gonna be time to taper. I don't know. But last week I did it. I was able to kind of get back into it, but I still had that residual fatigue. I still had that elevated heart rate. Things were just harder. So on Monday, so that was May 4th, when I kind of finally got back into the training officially. So that particular day, I had to run an easy run. It was supposed to be 8 miles. I just did 6, really easy. It's kind of a jog. I did a little bit of cross training and elliptical. I think I did get back in the hot tub again to try to do some heat training on that day. So I was able to kind of get back in, do somewhat, what I was supposed to do. But I do remember that easy run being challenging, just mentally, more so than anything, because I just felt like, oh, like not quite 100%, and just kind of frustrated, really. And then Tuesday, we had a big snowstorm. So here in Colorado, we got a ton of snow. It was raining. It was cold. The road that I live on gets really muddy. And it was actually my birthday. It's just I think that's also part of this is I'm kind of ready to get back into training, and I was kind of excited. Like my plan was to go run in town, like run on the bike path. Maybe have it, I was hoping it would be a nice day. I could go outside and run or go maybe even, go somewhere else, trails. I don't know. I was kind of hoping I could get in a fun run outside, and the weather just did not cooperate. And I think the most frustrating part about it is we absolutely needed the moisture, like no doubt about that. But it's like, why wasn't it snowing back in December or January when we're all expecting it? In fact, that's when I'm excited about it. And it snows on May 5th on my birthday when I'm starting to get back into training after being sick. It's just funny and ironic. I mean, maybe it was a little bit of a gift because we absolutely did need the weather, the moisture, but I was kind of resigned to running on the treadmill. Just didn't have the energy or the strength or the capacity at that moment to be able to go outside and run in that. So I did, and I tried to do a little bit of a workout, and it ended up like I was just trying to I was supposed to do 8 times 1K at 5K to 10K pace, and there's just no way that was gonna happen, so it ended up just being, like, on the treadmill, half-mile repeats at I just was watching my heart rate, basically, and trying not to let it go much past, like, threshold, so I just tried to keep it fairly easy. I did do a strength training session that day, which felt good because I had to let go of some of my strength training when I was sick too, but it was just frustrating because the pace was way off from where it should have been. The effort seemed harder. I'm starting to really question my fitness, how much I've actually lost at this point. Um, just being inside, it just, I think, kind of caused a little bit of feeling down, a little bit of feeling a little bit like not necessarily sorry for myself, but maybe a little bit like just kind of like, well, woe is me, like this sucks. But those are all feelings that we all have. So it just happens. Everybody kind of gets that sometimes, especially after being sick. I think it's almost expected. I'm going to have a little bit of frustration trying to get back. The next day, Wednesday, I actually had to spread it into 2 separate runs, 2 easy runs. So I did 2 easy run in the morning, then an easy 3 miles in the evening just because of my day. Um, there actually was the snow day for my son. So when he's home, it's a little bit more challenging for me to get my run in. So it just meant I had to kind of split it into 2. And then Thursday, I finally kind of felt better. I was actually able to go outside and it was nice out. So I also kind of split that into 2 runs because I actually had a half marathon workout I was trying to do Saturday. And actually, this was supposed to be my down week. 2 2 more weeks of kind of higher mileage, and then this last week was supposed to be kind of a down week before that half marathon, which was gonna be a specific kind of workout for marathon training, but it all went I mean, all that plan just went to yeah, I didn't have the ability to take another easy week, so I'm trying to kinda ramp up my training a little bit. So on Thursday, I did, like, 10 times 30 seconds at 5K just to get a little bit of speed infused in there. I felt better, it wasn't great, my heart rate was still a little elevated, but I felt better. I also was able to do a little bit of like some plyometrics and some upper body strength, and then a few more miles easy on the treadmill that day, later in the day to kind of again get a little bit more my mileage back. Friday was just a pre-race shakeout and a little bit of cardio or elliptical. So for almost 5 miles easy, real easy, and then an elliptical workout for 20 minutes. And then I had on Saturday my half marathon workout and I'm trying not to be too frustrated because it actually went a little bit better than I expected it to based off how I was feeling earlier in the week. My original plan when I signed up for it was to do the half marathon all at race pace, at marathon race pace, which normally would have been easy because it would have been at marathon race pace, not half marathon race pace. But I knew going into it, I had to change my expectations. So I kind of wrote a workout where I was supposed to alternate between um, faster and slower or marathon pace and then 90% of marathon pace and kind of alternating. It ended up being that I spent less time at my marathon pace that I wanted and a little bit more time that was a little bit slower than that. The course was a small race, not very many people. So a lot of it I was just kind of running alone, which is always hard enough. A lot of gravel, soft dirt, a lot of sharp turns. I mean, it was a good race, but it it was just not what I had originally intended. But I got a good workout. But again, just looking back, I tried not to I try to go by effort, and I really struggled at the end. It was a little bit uphill. And then when we turned around, it was downhill. I could definitely feel I was just struggling for like 2 miles, going like maybe uphill a little bit. And then we turn around and to the finish, and I'm like, oh, this feels better. But my heart rate was much higher than where it should have been for that effort and for that pace. And so I'm trying to really keep myself in check in terms of not letting myself go down a rabbit hole of, oh my gosh, I've lost all my fitness. Like, I'm going to have to definitely change my goal for the race. I don't know. Yes, that workout didn't go as planned, but it'd been 2 weeks. I've been sick. I'm still kind of recovering a little bit. I still haven't, regained my heart rate, and my body's probably like in shock at this point because it basically had 2 weeks where I wasn't running, and now I'm trying to ask it to do all this mileage again. So I have to keep things in perspective, but it's really hard not to go down the rabbit hole of negativity of, my gosh, that went horribly. I'm lost a good portion of my fitness. I'm gonna have to really reframe my whole marathon goal. I mean, maybe I do, and maybe I have lost a significant amount of fitness, and it's possible I'm gonna have to reframe my goal and reevaluate, I mean. But I don't know for sure yet. I still, at this point on Saturday, I have, that point, six weeks until marathon. And so I still have like 4 weeks that I can get some solid training in. And when I was reading online was sometimes it takes a few weeks where the heart rate's a little elevated and the effort seems harder. And then when you start to kind of get back and recovered fully from an injury or an illness, I mean, you can start to realize your fitness again. So I'm trying to remain as optimistic as possible. It's just hard because I've had now like two kind of these half marathons that I've kind of signed up for, kind of hoping they would be both something that would give me confidence. And I don't now, like, both of them didn't go as planned and for different reasons, but it's kind of now eating away a little bit at my confidence and in my ability, I think, to execute this race. And so I don't know. So I'm just trying to keep going and hope that it comes together and I start to get some of that fitness back, and maybe I'll have a great workout that gives me some confidence between now and then. I'm trying not to kind of give up and say, hey, whatever, I'm just not even gonna try, or I'm gonna just reevaluate my goal right now. I want to give it another week or two, but it is really challenging, and it yeah. So the other thing, I had a recovery run on Sunday. It was a little bit sore, had a sore quad, just understandably, because I obviously hadn't done a hard workout in a while. My body's trying to get back into it. And I woke up this morning feeling like, I don't know, pretty crappy, pretty bad, just really tired, just kind of like, oh my gosh, sore, despite trying to recover yesterday. So I did an easy 5 miles today. I was supposed to do 6, but I could only really, really easy, keeping my heart rate, bet- trying to keep it around 120, 130. Maybe went a little above that, but really trying to keep that heart rate low. So very, very recovery. I had an elliptical. I forgot my swimsuit, so wasn't able to get my hot tub training in today, but hopefully I can do that later this week. And then just a little bit of a band workout later if I can fit that in. But here we are. I'm back in. I'm got some workouts this week. I have a long run this weekend. So it's that, this is where we're at. I'm not sure. I'm still can't come to you and be 100% confident that I'm back and that illness didn't have some sort of negative consequence that is not recoverable, or I'm not able to kind of get back to where I was. I don't know, but I'm not back yet. And so I wish I had like better, more optimistic news, but I don't. I'm going to talk a little bit about recovery, kind of what I'm going to be focusing on, especially over the next couple of weeks to really make sure that I am recovering what was doing before with recovery that I thought was really helping me, how I'm going to think about it moving forward to make sure that I do recover from workouts and I hopefully can regain some fitness and what am I doing and how do I think about it and when it comes to nutrition and or other strategies. So I just went through all of the last week or two of training and kind of where I'm at. Now I want to refocus the episode a little bit more on the recovery piece. And so I want to talk a little bit more about what I'm doing or how I'm thinking about recovery. Obviously, it with this episode, I'm thinking, well, I'm kind of I feel like it's part of me is kind of being hard on myself because I just obviously didn't get the recovery piece quite right. Or, there's probably some people out there that might be like, well, who are you to talk about recovery when you just got so ill with the flu? And obviously, if you had been recovering properly or you had been doing this right, you wouldn't have gotten so sick and it wouldn't have taken you out. I definitely get that argument, although I do think overall my recovery and my ability to manage recovery is quite good. You do have to remember the last two marathon builds, I really didn't have any setbacks. I think truly what happened to me with this most recent illness was not lack of trying to recover, doing all the things right. It was just those things that happen in life that throw us off. It was the unexpected stress that kind of can get you. It's like this happens to almost everyone, no matter how hard you try to recover properly and do all the things right and sleep and manage stress and all that. Sometimes things just happen and it's out of our control. I mean, this happens to even the most elite of athletes, where they could be doing really everything right. They have everything at their fingertips to recover. They don't have jobs. They maybe, their whole job is just to train and recover and do all of that. And they still sometimes end up getting sick or having a setback. So, even the best of us, those of us who have the most resources still have this happen. And so I'm coming at this from when I'm mostly doing it right and things are going well, I think I'm mostly doing recovery pretty well. So I want to talk about it in those terms and kind of what I'm thinking of now that I've had this little bit of a setback. How am I managing the recovery piece as I'm trying to get back into training? I am finding that the workouts, especially my workout that I did Saturday with the half marathon and then trained to bounce back in with like a 19-mile day that day, it's I'm not recovering or bouncing back as quickly. This today was definitely one of those days where I'm like, okay, I kind of had it fairly easy Sunday and I still am not recovered and I'm still feeling almost as though I've been hit by a bus. I'm sore, I'm tired, so it's even more now I think the recovery piece is even more important because I'm managing these other variables of trying to kind of still recover a little bit after being knocked out for a while with the flu. So I think this is really a pertinent discussion. Um, I think the first thing when it comes to recovery, there's a lot of stuff out there like sales, like snake oil kind of stuff, supplements, things like that are sort of touted in improving recovery. There are maybe like a few supplements I take, but I want to kind of start with just the very basics when it comes to like the kind of pillars, especially for masters athletes. I'm coming at this from a recovery standpoint and also from the recovery standpoint for masters athletes. The number one thing is sleep. That's I think basic, like no, yeah, of course, like duh, like that's obvious, right? But sleep is probably, I mean, above all other things and everything else you could do, with all the supplements and all the other stuff, like sleep is probably going to be the number one thing that you can do to recover. And it's probably the most important. So I put that kind of like number one and I'm numbering it as like most important to maybe least important, but also like they're all important. But this one's kind of a big one. So getting, a minimum of 7 hours to 9 is going to be key, and there really isn't anything you can do to mask poor sleep. Like, when you don't sleep well and it compounds, like, you one day I mean, one day of poor sleep probably isn't gonna totally disrupt everything. It if you're having, like, a couple days in a row or, like, several days a week where your sleep isn't great, it's definitely going to hinder recovery, even for the younger athletes out there, because that is really when we are repairing everything, tissues, muscle tissue, everything's kind of in that repair process overnight. Growth hormone is a big piece of it. There's, like, some hormonal regulation and changes that happen at night, but we do, when we're sleeping, kinda get that growth hormone release. I mean, it's not like it's gonna be beyond physiological levels, but that's a big piece of really just kind of that repair and growth that's happening overnight. So if you don't have a chance to allow your body to go through that process because you don't sleep, the body's not gonna be able to repair and, recover as well. We also Inflammation is a big piece of it too. So if you sleep, you kind of reduce any inflammation that might be still lingering from the day before. It's just like so important. If you're not sleeping, you don't have that repair, you don't have that recovery, inflammation's higher. It's just going to set you up for potentially not having as good of a day of training, or like having to take longer to recover from a hard workout. So we're going to go ahead and put sleep there. That might be like an obvious one, but I think it's worth mentioning because when we're talking about recovering, that's number one. I think the other one that obviously from my point of view is really important is going to be like nutrition and hydration. Something that I am learning a lot, or I've known a lot already, but I'm starting to really recognize as an athlete myself, is the importance of carbohydrates and recovery. I'm going to do a deep dive on kind of the history of high carb, like what the whole history of like consuming carbs during workouts, and like how we went from, I don't know, back in the 1880s, 1800, late 1800s, of barely eating anything, maybe barely taking in water, eating meat before we started, a marathon, to like where we are now, where carbs are just like, get as many carbs as possible per hour. I want to do a little deep dive on the history there and kind of why it's changed so much, and the why that is such a big piece of some of these recent performances we're seeing of sub 2 hour marathons and that sort of things. Nutrition is kind of, there's certain supplements that maybe are helping, and also the way we're fueling is way different, and that is making a difference. And it also makes a difference in recovery. If you think about it, and something I'm realizing too is the more we deplete ourselves during training, the more it takes to recover from that. So what I mean by that is if you're doing a workout or a long run, if you're tapping into glycogen so much that you're depleting almost all of your glycogen and you're ending those training runs just completely depleted, it's taking you hours to recover because you don't feel good, you're low energy, that also is going to like bleed into maybe even days to recover. So the less that you can deplete your glycogen, the better you are in recovery. And that is something I've known, tell my athletes, but until I really started making a better effort to get carbs in during my training, not just in the long runs, but now I've been during any workout that's lasting longer than 75 minutes or so, I am actually taking in carb, whether it's a drink mix or a gel or something, like I'm taking carbs in for those shorter workouts that are intense. And instead of like having that rule of 90 minutes and you don't take in carbs unless it's over 90 minutes, I found that especially for hard workouts, even if they're less than 90 minutes or if they're close to 90 minutes, to take in carbs during is immensely helpful for recovery, because you're not tapping in so much, you're not depleting yourself so much during the workout because you're not depleting your glycogen. You're providing some carbs so that you're not so depleted that you're then it's taking you a while to recover. And so then I found when I'm really good about carbs before, during, and then obviously afterwards, my ability to recover and be able to feel good the next day is so much better generally. So That's a huge thing, and not just during, but, like, immediately after my exercise. Yes, I'm having some protein, I'll talk about that in a minute. Carbs, 1.2 grams per kilogram within, like, an hour or so, right away. That's just kind of a general recommendation, but that might be a starting point to kinda think about it. So you're taking in carbs, refueling, replenishing, that is so important, and that's a huge key to recovery, so that when you go into the next day, if you haven't fully replenished and your glycogen is below where it should be or not optimized, then it's going to be harder for you to feel good on that next section session. And if you're under fueling, that compounds day to day. And eventually you kind of run out of an energy and the ability to continue training. So it's all about nutrition, hydration. So getting enough fluid. I take a handheld water bottle with me. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt, but I do that a lot of times, especially when it gets hot, especially when I'm running more than an hour. Take that handheld water bottle and I have electrolytes and water in there and I drink it. And if it's really hot, I'll do loops, come back and refill it so that I'm hydrating, even if it's a fairly short day. So, same with carbs. I don't wait until it's 90 minutes or more. I try to incorporate the fluid, especially when it's warmer out. It's very important. And then I'm hydrating all day long, just kind of like making sure I'm not over excessively drinking, but I'm just drinking so that especially when I go to the bathroom, it's not, dark yellow or something. I'm just kind of assessing that. I'm assessing my thirst, making sure I'm hydrating. And then with protein, another key thing, making sure in general you have 20 to 30 grams of protein, 3, maybe 4 times a day, but definitely post workout, at least 20 to 30 grams and more if you're a larger person. Very important. So you're kind of thinking, making sure you're getting enough protein throughout the day, but then also in that post uh, workout recovery window, you're taking in that protein, you're taking in that carbs, you're replenishing. Very important. That's going to be super key. That's probably just right next to sleep or undersleep in terms of importance. The other one I would say would be just generally managing training load. This is where it's important to be flexible with your schedule. Like this week, I've already determined I was supposed to do a speed session tomorrow. I'm kind of wiped out from the weekend. I'm tired today. My quad hurt. I was a little sore. I just know that it's probably not a good idea to try to go out tomorrow and do a key session. I'm just not ready for it. I'm moving it to Wednesday. So even like, I mean, that's not always feasible or, people can't always do that because of their schedule. I get that. But sometimes you have to manage that training load. You have to kind of see how you feel, use other parameters, maybe like resting heart rate or HRV, whatever you're using to kind of determine whether or not you're recovering. But honestly, sometimes it is just about managing the load. And sometimes you're going to feel great and you're going to recover well. But in my case, with being sick, it just wasn't easy for me to recover. I'm just struggling a little bit more and I'm having to recognize that. So I'm going to move that key workout to Wednesday and hope that maybe by the end of the week I start feeling more myself. Maybe my heart rate returns to where it needs to be and I can kind of carry on with the rest of my week. But I have to make sometimes those decisions because I don't want to go into tomorrow, especially if I'm not really sure how I'm going to feel, and then try to push through a workout that goes kind of subpar and then I'm just kind of like trying to recover from that and struggling. I'd rather have that workout go really well and feel good. So I'm going to move it and that's okay. I'm just managing my training load, focusing on quality over quantity, even though yes, volume is important, but you also have to manage, those quality sessions are going to be kind of what moves the dial, what moves the needle in terms of getting more fit. So you have to kind of think about that. The other thing I would say would be, flexibility, mobility can be important to not necessarily sitting there and stretching where you do like static stretching, but some sort of mobility. I think that's something that's really helped me, especially kind of as a master's athlete, is just adding in the mobility. Like I use an app for mobility and it has different settings of like just general mobility or recovery or like pre-workout stuff that you can kind of do to kind of get ready for a workout, activation stuff. And sometimes it's more like active stretching, like more targeted to like the muscles I've used. So that's kind of the mobility piece that I do, but also the foam rolling a little bit. Sometimes I use like a lacrosse ball just gently to kind of massage out of an area that's a little bit tender or just kind of tight. And then sometimes I'll use my Theragun or It's like a percussion gun that I use. I find that very helpful. Yeah, maybe there's not much science behind it, but it does make me feel like maybe the blood flow, to it. Um, but for whatever reason, it does help me feel like I recover a little bit quicker when I'm incorporating that more often. So those are things that I tend to do that really help me out. Active recovery. So those really light movements, on easy day or just like recovery days. Like today was one of those days where I was trying to keep my heart rate, you know, really around 130 or less. Like some of times it went up a little more, but I was really trying to actively keep it low. It was truly just like an active recovery day, like just moving my body, but not pushing too hard. I think sometimes those days are really important, or just trying to get some blood flow, remove waste spot products, but not pushing your body in any way that's going to it's going to put a lot of stress or load on your body. That's, I think, helpful. I also think that, sometimes massage therapy can be really helpful. I do sometimes occasionally get a massage. Some people think that that's more helpful than others, but I think that can be helpful. I sometimes use compression garments. So I have like these socks that kind of come up that are compression socks that come up to my knee. Um, I don't know I mean, I can't say like I found that they're making a huge difference, but I do sometimes when I'm like today, I have them on when I'm just particularly struggling, just to see if I can get some added blood flow so that I can kind of again move some of those waste products, get those nutrients to those tissues that need to recover, and just kind of overall, maybe it helps a little bit. I can't say that makes a huge difference. I don't really believe so much in cold therapy anymore. I think there can be like a time for that. I would not do it immediately after a workout because you blunt some of that adaptive response. It may be something you can add in like later on in the day, several hours after a workout to kind of help with inflammation, help feel better. I know some people really like that because it helps them feel better. But I would just be cautious with cold therapy. I haven't really been utilizing it at all this training cycle. I do sometimes do warm baths, like Epsom salt baths. I think it's just more relaxing than anything. It probably helps with stress because obviously, something we didn't focus on here is just stress management can be a big piece of it. And if you're doing a hard workout and you're doing all these other things to recover, but you're really stressed, that's going to take a big toll on you to be able to recover. So, like anything you can do that's maybe just helping you be a little bit more relaxed and less stressed can make a big difference. I think that's kind of where I put the Epsom salt bath, the warm baths in there. And then maybe that magnesium in the Epsom salt can help a little bit with muscle soreness and easing some of that stiffness that you get. So those are things, that might help. I also think that, kind of with the managing the load is just really focusing on those rest days being recovery. Like the easy days need to be easy. I've said this before during some of our episodes. I think one of the biggest mistakes athletes make is taking the easy days too hard, and then they're never really recovering, and so they're never really getting those quality days, super qualities. So everything's kind of subpar. So making sure you respect the rest days and respect the easy days. Take it easy. Don't go hard on your easy day because that's not when you're going to make your gains. It's kind of when you're maintaining, you're recovering. It's still important, from aerobic capacity to maybe get some of those easy days and just run, but it's not really moving the dial. It's those hard training days where you get that good quality work. That's when that's going to move the dial in terms of fitness. So remember that. I do think once you have all of these other things down, your basic nutrition, you're refueling, you're sleeping well, you're managing stress well as you can, you're maybe doing some of these mobility and other things to kind of help, then I think at that point you can look at maybe supplements. Um, I don't think supplements, I think the tendency is people want to take the shortcut. And so it's easy to want to be like, I'm going to try to take some supplements that are going to help with recovery, thinking you can kind of get away with not doing some of the other things. And unfortunately, the sleep or the recovery supplements aren't really going to help you at all if you're not already doing some of like the pillars of recovery. So don't even consider adding in supplements unless you already have everything else dialed in. It's just not going to help you. It's a waste of money. But if you do, wanna take some supplements. I've got a few that I think are helpful, but there's, again, nothing that's gonna make a huge difference. These are just, like, maybe 1%. I don't know, like, not very much. They're just helping a little bit. They might support some things, in recovery, but they're not gonna replace sleep or, managing your training load or nutrition. So one that I do use, protein powders as a means to get in enough protein sometimes. I know sometimes people are like, "Oh, you've gotta eat everything, get your protein through food." I genuinely understand that, and if you are able to meet all your protein needs through food, that is fantastic. I think that's great. Personally, for me, I struggle a bit, especially in that post-workout period, to eat enough food or to just eat and have an appetite at all. So I do rely quite a bit post-workout on, like, protein powders. I probably have 1 serving of protein powder a day when I'm training hard. Not every day, but definitely when I'm training hard, and that's just because it's got the whey protein specifically has a good amount of leucine, and you benefit from about 2 to 3 grams of leucine as a way to stimulate muscle protein synthesis. It's an important thing to help stimulate that repair process, and so I just think it's easy sometimes to throw in some whey protein into a smoothie with some, like, very healthy nutrients like berries, maybe a banana, just kinda making it a really healthy, get some carbs, but I do that a lot because I really like smoothies and they're refreshing and they help me get the calories and the nutrients that I need. So I'll do that. And sometimes I do, if I'm on the go, use like a pre-made protein drink. But most of the time, I try to use a smoothie. So I do use protein powder. I think that can be a useful recovery tool if you have a hard time getting enough protein. And yes, it's better to get food, but you know what? We all have busy lives, and protein is so important. So if you struggle with getting enough, I think it's absolutely okay to have a protein powder. Just don't use it as like just protein powder all day and you never eat anything with protein. That wouldn't be advised. And the other thing that might be helpful for recovery might be creatine. There is some potential benefit to recovery, although that's not like parsed out 100%. I think it's just the way creatine works to kind of replenish um, the creatine in your muscles for the phosphocreatine system that you might use for like really intense workouts. I mean, there's potentially some benefit there. I've found that creatine maybe helps a little bit. I know I've noticed a few differences in maybe recovery, but just kind of my ability to put in those faster efforts and be able to feel good with those. So there may be some benefit there. I'll take creatine and I also use omega-3 fatty acids. So I don't take that immediately after my workouts, but I usually take the omega-3s in the evening before bed. They're just a really healthy fat that we don't get enough of. It's an anti-inflammatory fat. Most people don't eat enough fish. So it just kind of helps with, you know, structural support, maybe recovery. There's a potential there. I don't know if it's a very strong one, but it's just generally, something you might want to consider. Tart cherry juice is one that can maybe reduce muscle soreness. I do use sometimes a tart cherry juice concentrate, and I make like a drink with a squirt of that in there and bubble seltzer water, like lime seltzer water. It's a like almost like a mocktail thing that I make with it, and add a little bit of lime element, and it's really good. Nice little recovery drink, and I do that sometimes. Maybe it helps with sleep. I don't know if I can say it makes a big difference, but there is some evidence to support that. So, you could take that what you would like with it, but and there are other supplements out there that kind of powders and things like that that kind of like say, oh, you're going to recover. There might be benefit from taking magnesium for sleep before bed, just to maybe help with sleep if you struggle with sleep. So, again, it's not like directly maybe impacting recovery, but if it's helping you sleep, then you're going to recover better. So those are just some of the supplements that are out there. There are some like powdered recovery, um, like protein drink kind of things that you can take. I don't know if any of that really has any evidence to say that it helps with recovery. But in general, if you're doing it and you're taking it and you think it's helping or you feel better with it, then take it. If you start it and you try it and it doesn't seem to be making a difference, then it's probably not, so just you can, as long as it's safe and maybe third party certified, so we make sure we don't have any contaminated ingredients in there, you can try it. And if it doesn't work, then don't take it anymore. So that's a one thing I would say about supplements that, you know, sometimes I feel like people just, like, take them and they don't have it doesn't seem to be making a difference, and they keep perpetually buying it because they think it's I don't know, because it's something they do or something, and so if it's not seeming to make a big difference or you're not noticing a difference, it may not be actually making a difference, so just something to think about. And just, like, remember to listen to your body. If it's okay to take a rest day, it's okay to skip a workout if you're just really sore or you have pain or there's something going on or you're starting to get sick or you're feeling sick. It's okay to take that extra rest day to allow your body to recover, rather than push through. I know that's hard for a lot of athletes. I know it's hard for me sometimes. I struggle with that, to just kind of want to get the workout in and then, know, "Oh, I've got a certain amount of mileage I'm trying to hit. If I take this day off, I'm not going to be able to hit it." And there's this pressure. But sometimes if we push through, then we end up having to take more days off than we wanted because we pushed through and ended up getting sick or getting an injury, and our body has to recover even more. So, just the last thing I would say would just be making sure to listen to your body. Don't push through anything. I know that's hard to do, but doing all the other things and really focusing on kind of the pillars of recovery. Hopefully, you won't have too many days where you're that sore or, getting injured so that you don't even get to that point. So that you're recovering well and not needing to be in that position to have to like take several days off. But anyway, I was hoping that was helpful. Those are just some things I think of when we come to recovery. We have our recovery episodes that we had kind of in the beginning of the podcast. So it was episode 3, recovery from training and why it is important. And then we had our recovery part 2 with the nutrition strategies. So those are probably helpful if you want to dive back. Those may not have as good of a quality as some of our later episodes in terms of the audio, but they might be still very valuable to listen to. So I do encourage going back, listening to that, and hopefully you found this episode helpful. I'm hoping when I come back in 2 weeks, I'll be a little bit more optimistic, maybe a little more energetic, have a little bit better mentality about how things are going. I think it's trending that way, but we'll have to see. It will be to be determined how things are going. So I'll be back at you in 2 weeks with another Road to Grandma's episode. And in the meantime, enjoy your training. Enjoy the journey, and I will, see you all. Well, the next time, our next episode that record, but maybe for my deep dive, you'll see me again. But otherwise, my Road to Grandma's hopefully in 2 weeks. So take care. Bye.